Oh, let's go. My chicken nuggies are done. Oh God, that's fucking hot. Yes. Oh, I can't wait to eat one of these. Wait, what? New Serum just dropped? New Serum just dropped. I gotta get back on YouTube. I gotta make the first video. I gotta be one of the first on YouTube to drop a Serum 2 video. Come on, baby. We're back. Serum 2. Let's fucking go. All right. I'm gonna be the first on YouTube to drop this. Oh, brother. It's another Serum 2 tutorial.
Cubic.
Hello, humans. Guess who's back? It's been literally forever since I've said that phrase. Hello, humans. I don't even know how long it's been at this point. It's been like 2 years, I think, or it feels like it at least. It's been so long since I've been on YouTube, but Serum 2 just released. There's a fuck ton to dive into, and the whole scene is obviously extremely hyped. Like, this is gonna usher in a new era of sound design, just like Serum 1 did, just like Massive did. They've revolutionized so much. They've added so many new features. It's a really familiar synth. It still feels like Serum, but it's at the same time a brand new synth. So what I'm gonna do for Serum 2 and for you, I'm going to be breaking down every single aspect of the synth over the next couple weeks, starting with just a nice basic overview. I'm going to be diving into everything, beginner to intermediate, hidden features. Like, one of the next videos I'm going to be doing is breaking down all the warp modes. Today, we're going to do a basic overview. You're going to get a nice understanding of just how to navigate Serum 2, some of the important keyboard shortcuts. But yeah, think of this whole series as like a video manual. It's tedious as fuck to just sit down and read the manual for this type of shit. It gets boring. And if you're a beginner or even just a newer producer, it's hard to kind of fully understand some of what they're talking about in the manual. So I'm here to basically help dumb it down a little bit, simplify it all, give you all the information you need to know so you can get back in the DAW and start making some crazy ass sounds, because Serum 2, it's fucking insane. The amount of stuff you can do. Like, I did a whole masterclass like this for Vital when Vital came out, and boy, that was a lot simpler, a lot less videos than this is gonna take, but it's all gonna be worth it if you just stick through, really soak in all the knowledge. You might have to watch some of these videos multiple times for it to click, but hey, enough talking from me. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so when you first enter Serum, you will be greeted by this beautiful, weird looking page, because it looks like Serum, but it's not Serum. But it is Serum, but it's not Serum, because it's Serum 2. This is the init patch. If you're really new, init means initialized. Let's go over what you're seeing on this page, and then we're gonna go through all the pages, just give you an overview, understanding, so you can at least get started exploring the synth and kind of understand where everything is, how to get to everything, and what it is. So let's start from top to bottom. So at the top here, you have the different tabs. You have the Oscillator tab. This is the main page of Serum 2 where all of your oscillators are, as well as all of your modulation. The modulation stays in the same place though. So this tab gives you access and control over all of Serum's oscillators, as well as the 2 built-in filters meant for the oscillators. The oscillators are what generate all of the sound in Serum. Next, you have the mix knob. This is like a mixer section where you have control over the routing, volume, panning, and mix of various oscillators, filters, as well as the bus channels, the master channel, and the direct out. We'll be going through all of this more in depth in other videos, and later in this video I'll at least be giving you a basic overview of all of these individual sections. This is the effects section. This is where you get to add effects to your sound, like EQ, compression, flanger, phaser, delay, disperser, other filters, all sorts of fun stuff. Next, you have the matrix. Now this is a little more advanced. It didn't really make sense to me for the first couple years I produced, but it is really important, especially the deeper you get into sound design. This is basically, it's like controlling the routing of all of your modulations. And then we have a global tab. So this has a lot of global settings, extra hidden settings that change how the interface work, change how some of the engines work, the quality of the overall sound and output of the synth. You can control a lot of interesting stuff here. So then up here, you have the name of your preset, whatever artist or company made your preset, any notes they might have left. So for instance, if you buy any presets from Sonic Weaponry, link below by the way, you would see sonicweaponry.com and then any notes of how to best use the preset. You can save your preset by clicking this button. You can select new presets here. You'll have all your old Serum presets in the S1 presets and then all the new Serum 2 presets here, as well as any user presets you've made. You can view all of your presets. There's tags, there's all sorts of info, preset name, author, category, etc. You get control of all the macros right here so you can test them out. You can preview your presets. Next, you have access to the menu button. There's more hidden features inside of here, as well as the ability to initialize your preset. So if you don't like the sound you're making, that sounds gross. Let me just init the preset, and now everything gets reset to default, which the default is just one oscillator enabled with a saw wave. You can save a new default preset if you don't want it to just reset to this every time. Like let's say you use a compressor all the time. I'm saying this because I do this pretty much every time I sound design. I start off by adding an OTT. So you could save as a default preset, and then every time you init the preset, it would load whatever you chose to save. Then over here, you have the volume knob. They call it main volume, but you can think of it as the master volume. It's like the final output of your synth aside from the direct out, which is separate from the main output. So this is just like a global volume knob essentially. Then you have an awesome new feature added to Serum, which since like Vital, and I think Phaseplant also has it now, but Vital was one of the first synths I saw personally introduce undo and redo buttons inside of the synth. A very welcomed change, so you can undo or redo pretty much anything that you do inside of Serum. I think there's a couple minor limitations, but it covers pretty much everything. So those are the top tabs. You can also click the Serum logo up here to change how zoomed in and out your Serum is, and hopefully once they add skins to Serum 2, it'll also probably be in that section. So next, let's go through the oscillators real quick. So yeah, these are the oscillators. This is how you get sounds. Let me turn up the octave. Actually, speaking of octave, transition to the keyboard. Something really cool about Serum 2 is that they're giving you the option to transpose your keyboard, basically increasing what octave or pitch you want the keyboard to be defaulting at inside of the synth. So like what just happened where I played the wrong octave. Like that was too low for what I was going for. So instead of moving my keyboard octave up or moving my DAW, like if you're in FL Studio and you bring in some MIDI in the piano roll, instead of having to transpose that up, you can transpose the keyboard. And I believe you can double click it if you want and type in 12, that's an octave, 12 semitones. And now it's higher. Maybe I want it even higher. And I believe it gets baked into the preset too. So any of you guys who are making presets and you just want to make sure things are starting out at a certain octave, you can do that. So yeah, anyways, that's a little extra feature. But so yes, we got the oscillators, right? So we have three main oscillators, oscillator A, B, and C. Each oscillator, you can change what type of oscillator you want to choose. There's a wavetable oscillator. That's the classic Serum oscillator. I'm not going to explain exactly what a wavetable is because this is more of like a basic overview video, but we will be getting into every single individual type of oscillator. I'll just quickly go through what they are in general. So we have a multi-sample oscillator, which allows you to load sound fonts, as well as, let's say someone recorded every single note of a piano, and then you want to be able to play a whole piano in one oscillator and have every single note be a different sample. Well, now you can do that. That's basically what a contact library is. So essentially you can build contact libraries in Serum 2, which is pretty crazy. Then you have just a normal sampler. You just drag a sample in and you have full control over it. There's also now a granular sampler that's inside of Serum. You drag a sample in and you have control over all of the individual grains of the sample. And now one of the coolest additions of Serum 2 is the spectral oscillator. You can drag a sample in and you have full control over the spectral frequencies / harmonics of the sound. It's pretty crazy. There's a lot you can do, especially for dubstep, in terms of the spectral oscillator. So you can also just scroll through all of these. It's a lot faster. But yes, those are the oscillators, the main sounds. Now, next you have the ability to add a sub oscillator, especially if you make dubstep. A lot of the sounds you'll be making in Serum 2, you'll want to have a sub on them. You can change the octave of the sub here. And you can change where you want the sub to go. And you can do this on all of the different oscillators. You can click the top right and change where you want to route it to. So if you route the sub to direct out, which if you're a newer producer and you don't know what you're doing, in general, you want your sub to go directly out unless you're intentionally trying to distort it or process it in the effects section. So you send it directly out. So basically think of Serum 2 is right here and you have an oscillator and all your oscillators are going into Serum 2, but then your sub oscillator, you make it direct out. Now it's going to go outside of Serum and it's not going to be processed by any effects or anything. It's just going to be just the sub untouched. You'll just be hearing this. And then if, for instance, I put delay on oscillator A, your sub is not affected by that. So you can change the routing, you can change the wavetable, octave. All these oscillators have the ability to control the volume. With the level, there's the ability to add and change warp modes to all three of these oscillators, no matter what oscillator mode you're on, except for the granular oscillator, in which you have to click this arrow to get access to the warp modes. Oscillator A, B, and C are your main oscillators. That's where the main places you're gonna be working, messing around with wavetables, crafting new sounds and harmonies. Then we have a noise oscillator over here, which allows you to have noise samples or any sample you want, but it's made for noise. But yes, you can use the noise oscillator to add noise. And that's adding texture and airiness. Or if it's like a darker, grittier noise and you pitch it down, then maybe it's like filling out the mid-range. You kind of use the noise as like an accent, like just another layer to kind of help fill in the sound a little bit. Then over here, the only things that aren't oscillators are the filters. The way the filter works is you have S, A, B, C, and N. Down here, S stands for sub, A for oscillator A, B for oscillator B, C for oscillator C, and then the noise. And then you have the ability to key track it. So basically the cutoff of the filter is correlated to whatever note you press, so you can keep things sounding consistent no matter what note you press. If you turn that off, notes are correlated to pitch, pitch is correlated to frequency, so a higher note is going to resonate and have its fundamental be at a higher frequency. So if your filter isn't following the pitch of whatever note you're playing, it'll affect each note differently because that note will be positioned at different parts of the frequency range. Hopefully that made sense. If you want to filter oscillator A and just oscillator A, not the noise in the sub, then you just click A, or you can click S, A, and N. You can also go into any oscillator and choose which filter you want it to go into, or put it in the middle for both. Control click to reset any knob or any setting to its default. So as you can see, I just changed the start and random of the noise. If I control click, it resets it. So that's something really important to remember. So in the filter, you can either have filter 1 go straight to main, which means it goes through the effects section, or you can have it go into filter 2, creating essentially, it's what's called a serial routing of filters. So filter 1 goes into filter 2. And so let's say you have oscillator A going into the filter. So you can do it up here, or you can just click this. So you have oscillator A going into filter 1. Now let's say I want to make essentially a copy of oscillator A, its output, that sound. Let's say I want to filter it like, and now I want another version of it going into filter 2, maybe into like a comb filter to add some like interesting resonance to it and tonality. Well, if I have filter 1 going into filter 2, then it's going to be a filtered sound going into this. and it's gonna not sound as cool. So maybe I want just the filtered sound separately, and then I wanna make a copy of the output to go into filter 2. So what you can do is you route filter 1 to main, and then you just go to filter 2 and you click A. And now A is going to both filter 1 and filter 2 separately. It's basically duplicated itself, and now you get 2 different versions of it. So there's no low end content here because I've just filtered that out, and it's just the high end. We still have the low end from here. So that's a little bit of insight into how the routing works and how you can kind of route the filters. And then, like I said, on all oscillators and filters, you can control the routing here. So if you want your filter to go into the effects section, you click main or direct out or none. Which is interesting, but there is an actual use case for none, which I will get into in a later video when I go over some hidden features and techniques within Serum 2. So next thing to go over is this modulation section here. So you have the envelope modulators. They essentially work as an ADSR envelope. That's a common thing in pretty much every synth you'll find. It's the attack, decay, sustain, and release of a sound. It's kind of 4 core elements that control the dynamics and shape of a sound coming out of a synth. So the attack, for instance, changes how long the beginning transient of the sound takes to reach full volume. Or you can have it instant. Next, you can change the decay, so how long you want the sound to be. That doesn't really matter until you turn down the sustain. Sustain is so if I press a note, it just stays there as long as I hold it down. If I turn the sustain off, then I press a note for the same amount of time, it's gone because you're choosing to let the note decay. Basically, the volume goes away. You're choosing how long you want it to stay there. Now, if you want a little bit of both, you can do the hold knob, which lets it sustain for as long as the hold knob is set, and then it'll decay. And you can control like the curve of all of these individual settings. And then the release is basically how long will the sound kind of stay there after I let go of the note. So like if I tap the note, you can hear it. It kind of gives almost like a tail or an echo to the sound. But if I turn the release all the way down, so that's how the envelopes work. By default, every single oscillator and filter is all routed to envelope 1 by default. You can go into the mix tab and click this little button here, and then it will no longer be routed to envelope 1. So for instance, let me make a little shape here. If I don't want that to control like the oscillator A and noise, if you click these, but by default, it controls everything. So if you want a really quick way to just control the dynamic and shape of everything in the synth all at once, go to the envelope. If you want some more creative ways to control sound, then go to the LFO tab. And LFO stands for low frequency oscillator. Basically, it lets you create a shape and then you can set the rate at which that shape oscillates. Now, if you want it to be synced to the BPM of your DAW, clicking or unclicking the host here, or if you want it to just be separate and just have like free control over the rate. So like if I put it on the level here, so you can get really creative with that, or you turn on BPM in the host, and if I put it at 1/4, it's gonna be quarter notes at 145 BPM. And just like the envelope modulators, all modulators here, you can drag them to any setting and it'll let you modulate that setting with either the LFO or the envelope. So in this case, we have this shape here set at a rate of 1/4 quarter notes. And now the volume will go up and down based on that modulation. And we can change the shape at which it's affected. Let me turn off the noise. That's kind of creepy sounding. And And so like the height of it kind of controls how intense whatever the setting is. We'll go deeper into the modulation later. Basically there's unipolar modulation. So the bottom here is at the bottom there, and the top here is at wherever this line goes to. If you do Alt Shift and then click, you can make bipolar modulation, which means that wherever this is in the center, it goes out left and right. And then again, the bottom here is at the bottom here, and the top is at the top here. I'll explain that a little bit better in a future video when we dive into how modulation works and all the little hidden features and everything there. In the LFO section, you can also choose different types of LFOs. If you're a newer producer, just stick with normal for now. I'll be going through all of these later, but there is some really cool, interesting new ways to modulate settings in Serum. You're not limited to dragging these types of things like the LFO, envelope, velocity, and note to just knobs. You can drag them to most settings. As you can see, at least on Windows, it kind of tells me a big nope symbol if it's not something I can modulate, but anything I can modulate, it shows me otherwise. So if I want to modulate the semitones, I can do that. Then over here, we have the ability to map velocity to any setting. So let's say we want to basically control the volume of oscillator 1 with how quickly and intense I click one of my keys on my keyboard. So if I give it a light tap, it's really quiet. If I give it a nice hard tap, it's loud. So if you want to be able to have whatever setting you drag it to be controlled by how lightly or hard you're performing on your keyboard to give it more of an organic feel or more variation, or to get extremely creative and put it on like a filter or something like that, that's a really good way to be able to execute that. Another modulator over here is the note modulator. So as you'll see, depending on what note I press, this green dot will move up and down this line. And so that's really cool. It's basically doing the key tracking feature that's on the filter, except you can apply that to any setting in Serum. So you can get really creative with that. Something really important to remember. I feel like it's really underutilized. Over here, we have the ability to control the voicing of Serum. So we can choose how many notes can be pressed at the same time. So we can make chords, or you put it on mono and you press multiple notes and it's only gonna play one note. Now you have another option called Legato. So if you have it on mono or one voice and you overlap two notes, it basically re-triggers the note. So it'd be just like if I went like this, but I'm overlapping them. But if I have legato on, it doesn't re-trigger the note, and instead it creates an interesting, almost pitch bend effect, especially if you turn up the portamento. It says porta time. Another term for it is called glide, and it's how long it glides between two notes that overlap. So it's a really subtle effect, but if I turn it all the way up, I just overlapped multiple notes and it basically made a riser out of it. If I put it more in the middle, then it's a more satisfying effect. So you can kind of make your melodies glide, and like it gives a really interesting effect, especially for like lead melodies. And as you heard, that's also kind of how they do a lot of that like West Coast hip hop, those like okay, I didn't do a good impression, but hopefully you know the types of leads I'm talking about. But anyway, so that's Portamento. You can have it all the ways on, and you can change the curve over here. And if you turn on scaled, I don't actually know what it does, but this is a perfect time to show you an amazing feature of Serum 2. If you hover over any setting on here, it generally pops up with a little help bubble that tells you what it does. So that is all that's going on in the main oscillator page. This is the most important page of the whole synth. Next, we'll quickly do an overview of the mix tab. So this is essentially, like I said, control over all of the routing. Something to point out, like if you have the sub mapped to direct out, you can now balance the volume of the direct out with the main volume. So let's say I want more sub and less of the saw wave. So this basically just gives you like session or mixer view in your DAW inside of Serum, and you get a better way to just control the balancing, the panning, the routing of all of the different main sections of the synth, all in the mix tab. Next, we got the effects. This is going to be one of the most important sections of Serum 2 for you. So first off, you have this icon here, which lets you expand the effects section, because sometimes it can get a little crowded in there, because now we have the new addition where they let you duplicate as many effects as you would like in Serum 2. So you can have 15 different OTTs if you want, and you should have 15 different OTTs. So you add in effects on the side here, and you can just keep adding them. You can hold Alt to drag to duplicate whatever you have already. You can delete by clicking here. You can enable or disable by clicking here. When it's red, it's disabled. You can load your own preset racks here. So I have this one, 4 OTT. It's actually 3 disperser. You can definitely expect to get a bunch of free preset racks and things like that from me on this channel. I'll definitely be dropping some sauce like that. So yeah, that's how you add and take away effects. And then you also have bus 1 and bus 2. So like you'll notice in all the routing, you have the ability to send stuff to bus 1 or bus 2. It's basically the same as like a send track. So if you do bus 1, then now, if we go to the mix knob, I'll show you. Oscillator A is going to be going through the main, but it'll also be going through the bus 1. And so let's say you have bus 1 going to direct out. You can basically split up the signal of your oscillator going to both the effects and direct out. And then you can have different effects on each one. So I'll get more in depth to it later on, but basically it allows you to have multiple effects chains processing different sounds, or it allows you to send your sub to bus 1 and put filters and distortion on just your sub, and then have oscillator A just be sent to the effects or to bus 2. So you can get really creative with all of this. So that's the effects section. Then we'll get into the matrix here. I'm just going to be very brief on this because this is a lot more advanced and complicated, but it is a very valuable section. So just like how you can drag an LFO to anything in here, like the level of oscillator A, now that shows up in the matrix. And so you have the source modulation. So what are you using to modulate? So you can choose a bunch of stuff here, your envelopes, your note, your oscillators. So you can have oscillator A modulate the level of oscillator B. Now, I don't even understand how that works, but I guess we're gonna find out. So in the matrix, you change the amount. That's basically the same as when you do this. So I don't really know what it means to modulate something with an oscillator. That's crazy, but you can do all sorts of stuff. So you choose the source and you choose the curve at which the modulation happens, the amount, the modulation, the polarity of the modulation, and then where it's going to. So that's like the most important thing. Like you choose LFO 1, and then maybe we want to modulate just the volume of the entire Serum 2 synth, the master volume. Well, now we can with LFO 1. There's no sound coming out. So that's how the matrix works. There's more complicated stuff here. We'll go over it in another video. And then I already kind of went through the global tab. Essentially, it's just a bunch more settings. I'll be diving into this deeper in the future. So that is pretty much a basic overview of the layout of Serum 2. All right, we did it, y'all. First video back. That is pretty much the essence of Serum 2. So hopefully that gave you a nice broad understanding of just everything that you can do in Serum 2, what all the tabs are for, like how to navigate throughout it. We'll be going in depth in all of these different things, probably starting with the different oscillators in the next couple videos. So make sure you subscribe and stay tuned, because I will be dropping all sorts of new tutorials and videos focused on Serum 2. And as I get back in the swing of things, I'll also be, just doing more content in general. Qbik's back, baby. If you haven't already, go ahead and check out sonicweaponry.com in the description. We do a lot of sample packs, preset packs, a lot of free packs, a lot of resources there for music producers, especially ones who make dubstep. But yeah, that is Serum 2, the basic overview, the beginning of essentially what's going to be a giant series, hopefully to become a Serum 2 video manual, essentially. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope it wasn't too boring. I hope it was informative and you learned something new, even if you aren't a beginner. But hey, until next time, humans, keep being yourself and stay creative, and I'll see you in the next video.